So thank you both. As I was saying to these guys yesterday, we could all of us in this room could probably talk about this topic endlessly and without any preparation, because it's something that we all think about a lot. So I wanted to start with the notion of having it all. I do feel like it's been a much maligned phrase, certainly among women in the last, I don't know, at least decade. And we're always looking for the thing that can replace it. So hence the title of our panel today. But I want you to talk just for a minute about, what do you think when you hear that phrase? What does it inspire in you? Why you think we should get rid of it? And I guess what could replace it? So Sam, you want to go first?
I do definitely think that it's time to kick having it all to the curb. It's an unattainable ideal. It's the idea that I could run my Fortune 500 company and make souffle for my son for lunch and have a really awesome sex life and then read the New Yorker before bed. And you guys do that, right? I do all of that a little bit sometimes. And I think the idea of replacing having it all with fulfillment in life, for seeking your own sort of recipe to put in your crock pot of satisfaction in life, is exactly what we need to do. It's defined differently for all of us, and I think there is support right now in the feminist community, in the mom community, to create those recipes on our own and support it.
I love recipe for your own crock pot of satisfaction. I think we might have to come back to that. Shilpa, what does it mean to you? Why do we need to kick it to the curb?
I feel similarly to Sam. Having it all to me is an idea that is defined. It's somebody else defining what your life should look like versus fulfillment is something that you actually define for yourself. So I often say that I'm mother of the year, one day a year, and it's about setting those.
Who nominates you? Your kids? Do they tell you when?
It's on days that I feel most fulfilled in that role, and really just trying to set those attainable goals and finding fulfillment in every aspect of your life on the grand scale, not in somebody else's perspective.
So if someone, if you meet someone, whether it's a peer or a younger woman that you work with who says, either I'm struggling with having it all, or I don't know how because you both have really successful careers. I think by any measure you seem to have I can't tell whether you've achieved your personal goals, but from the outside it looks pretty good. You've got robust family lives. I mean, you look like, to a lot of people, I would say that they would say you do have it all. So if someone comes to you and says, I'm struggling with trying to figure out how to have it all, you do, well, what do you say?
I think you have to nip it in the bud right when they're already judging for themselves based on what you have. So you have to really turn the conversation around and say, what does it look like for you? What do you even think it looks like for me? And let me tell you what my day-to-day reality is, and just really kind of dispel the myth right away, because if you even start engaging in that conversation, you set everyone up for failure. I would love to joke and say, oh, why, thank you, I do have it all. But that's never the case, and you really have to just tell them from the moment that, look, we should really break down what it means to be fulfilled for your own life, because you could never attain what you think you want from somebody else's.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very right. I agree. And I think that part of it is just picturing life with a different paradigm. Certainly our ideas about what success means and how a woman gets to the top of her level of achievement in whatever she does is very different from what it has been traditionally for men and also for women in past generations. And that ours looks a little more like a staircase, it looks like it goes down, it's a roller coaster. We take time to do different things that we need to do in our lives. Having it all is this idea that you've reached a pinnacle. And I don't think there is a pinnacle. I think there's just a patchwork of life for women, and that's something that we should accept and embrace and teach our girls to enjoy.
Yeah.
Because that's a way of having a fulfilling life. It's not always seeking the top prize.
Our girls and our boys. I will say,
yes.
we are only mothers of boys up here. So one boy, two boy, three boys. So I'm not, it does skew our perspective a little bit in, I'm sure, intangible ways, or it makes our lives a little maybe messier and more chaotic. So let's talk about fulfillment for a second. If we strive, all of us, to take having it all off the table and think instead of our personal and professional lives in terms of fulfillment, in terms of where integrating those two selves works and doesn't work. When you think about your own lives now, both professionally and personally, what makes you either feel or find fulfillment, and then how does that compare to you, say, at age 20, and you project to sort of retirement age? How do you see yourself defining fulfillment then?
Fulfillment for me for a long time has been sort of similar throughout my life, although my means of achieving it have been different. And from a very young age, I think because my first job out of college I was a producer-director of documentaries and television and film before starting the mother company. And my first job out of college was with a woman producer who had this really stellar career and then got sick and was very sick and sort of lost everything. And we were making a documentary together. And it suddenly, instilled in me right from the beginning that the most, and she lost all her friends in Hollywood, and she lost all, it was this rude awakening to me, who I had been so career-minded. That's where I was, that was my main focus in life. Suddenly I was like, you know what, that's not the most important thing. I can still strive to be the best professional I can be, but the most important thing is doing good in the world, making good connections between people, having important relationships, and raising good people. And so that started off very young for me. I know that's unusual, and that's still my goal. And in starting the mother company, it's an incredible way for me to do all those things within the context of my business. So our motto is helping parents raise good people. And I get to be both mom and entrepreneur at the same time. And that's really fulfilling for me. And we'll talk more about integration. But for me, that was a really big way of reaching fulfillment.
And so when you imagine then yourself, when you're thinking about retiring or not sort of, I guess, working at the level you're working now, do you think it will be the same?
That I'll have
what
the same
fulfills
goals?
you?
Yeah. I mean, I want to make the world a better place. That's number one for me. That's what I'm trying to teach my kid. That's what I'm trying to do with my work.
Right.
And that's what I will always try and do.
So it's an avocation kind of, right?
Yeah. And that's
lucky.
fulfillment. And so that goes no matter what I'm doing in this, crazy balancing act.
Oh, balance. That's another
sorry, I'm not supposed to talk about that.
Okay, Shilpa, how about you?
In my 20s, I was really about getting to some destination. I remember it was on the eve of my 24th birthday, and one of my mentors and bosses at Disney, I was already a manager at a very young age, at 24, and he said, wow, you're gonna be 25 tomorrow. That's a pretty big deal. At this stage, you're like a rocket. And when you blast off as this rocket, you have to pay very close attention to where you're headed. Because if you, just a little bit of difference in your trajectory, you could end up on Venus when you were aiming for Mars.
Oh.
And so I really had that mindset in my 20s. It was about the destination and making sure that I didn't have any misalignment and really trying to get there. Wasn't sure where there was, but I was gonna go after it with everything that I had. And as I got a little bit older and had more experiences, I realized it wasn't really about getting anywhere. It was about the journey itself and really appreciating along the way. And personal fulfillment for me is being fulfilled in what I'm doing now and being present in every aspect of my life. And I think as I go forward and onward, my goal is really not to go anywhere at all, to really just be grounded in myself, in my current location. So at 65, I hope that I can do that I'm not always trying to blast off to some other destination. Even though I'm just enjoying the journey, it's about really staying present and fulfilled and mindful internally and not be so external. And so that's kind of where I'm headed.
So what would you say to a woman who, you're both, very lucky in finding or crafting for yourselves. I mean, finding sounds a little accidental, which it wasn't.
Right.
Careers that really bring you fulfillment. What would you say if you meet a woman and she says, my job does not fulfill me? What do I do?
So I would ask them to really look deep into their history and their path and figure out at what point in their lives did they feel like they went astray. So when you're in that moment of being you're not passionate with what you do, you're not fulfilled by what your whole life looks like, it can be very daunting to make any change. And you don't know how to make a change. And so you can't see the forest from the trees, and you get mired in this sadness, I think. And so it's really about figuring out a place where you did feel lighter and you can actually open yourself up to possibilities. It's about finding that place in your life where you can dream again. And really actually hope for something different. And if you can figure out where that was in your own life, you can allow yourself to start charting out new paths and trying to figure out what goals you want your future to look like. And once you're able to do that, then you can actually figure out a step-by-step plan to get there. But if you start at just where you are now and trying to change everything, it's a very big task. And if you can segment it into smaller tasks, figure out when you were happy, figure out, okay, what will make you happy, figure out how you can, and then how to get there. That's what I would tell them.
Okay, so I'm going to add to that question, but I didn't prepare you that I was going to do this. So. And I'm about to add a hard part. When you think about women in the workplace in the last 5 or 10 years, and how so many women now are the breadwinners in their families, and how that's so different from 15 years ago. What if you're not fulfilled? You've reached that point where you're kind of bored, but you've got a mortgage and you're the breadwinner. Are there, and so that part makes you feel a little trapped. How do you, because what you've just described sounds so smart.
Yeah.
But once you factor in economic reality, sort of family economic reality, how can you still take those steps and pay your mortgage, I guess? I'm sorry. That's an unfair question. Sam, help her out if you have.
That's one of the greatest questions in life, of course. And we have to, work with our partners, work with our communities, ask for help. We have to figure out how to, forge new ground together as a community of women and mothers and entrepreneurs. There are support systems out there to help in those situations, and even mentors to help guide you in your business. Those are the moments where you really have to ask for help from the people who can help you.
And you probably have to stop sleeping a little.
I think that's the real answer.
If you really if you feel like you are doing everything to your absolute capacity, if you honestly think you're living in that way, I don't know. You're going to have to try to borrow from something else. But if you do feel like there's 10% or 20% more of yourself that you can apply, you have to do it. You can't do that overnight. You just have to figure out a path for you of what you could do at that moment.
Yeah.
So I was actually in that situation. My husband was in fellowship. I was the core breadwinner. I had a 1.5-year-old. He moved me to Baltimore, which is very far from San Francisco and very different than California. And I had to start my day, end my day with my son, also work the full day, and support us. And he was never around. And so I started studying for the GMAT at night. I applied at night, and it was very, very difficult. I didn't have any support structures, but I just knew, I didn't know if business school was the answer, but I knew I had to do something.
Yeah.
So I just did a little bit at a time, and it took a lot out of me, and honestly, I'm pretty exhausted, but I couldn't imagine doing anything differently now. And it really was the game changer for me.
Yeah.
And I will say, I think it's very important to, especially in extreme moments like that, to focus on the work. To not focus on the goal, the achievement that you want to make. I always say, there's always a bag of beans at the end of every achievement. Because there's going to be something that's going to make you need to strive for the next thing. There's going to be some drawback or something. But if you can focus on the work at hand, on a project, on what it is that you have, and you can achieve that small thing, you can find fulfillment in that rather than in this big picture of your life that you have.
Yeah.
which may not be working out because you need to make money and you need to,
I will say, there was one of my favorite things that's happened to me as the editor of Real Simple in the last couple of years is I got an email from a reader who lived someplace in the Midwest, I can't remember where, and she was an OBGYN, and she'd been doing that and supported her family. I mean, her husband worked, but I think she made a lot more money than he did. I forget what he did for a living. And she really didn't like her job anymore. Yeah. And so she went to some kind of coach, who said, think about the things that really make you excited and make you feel passionate. And she remembered back from like college how much she liked to write. And this coach that she was working with said, reach out to people and who inspire you, whose jobs look really fun to you. And so she sent me an email. And like to me, an OBGYN seems like someone who's really doing wonderful things, and I'm just a magazine editor, but like her job sounds really cool to me. But I thought it was so neat, So she did. I mean, what she did maybe isn't as hard as studying for the GMATs while you're taking care of a 1-year-old, 1.5-year-old, and supporting the family. But that was her little step to try to find the next thing. And this was now probably a year and a half ago. I have no idea where I said to her, please keep in touch and let me know kind of how this unfolds for you. And I haven't heard from her, but. Anyway, it was that was, I'll never forget that because she was doing the right thing in terms of taking that journey, I thought.
Yeah, just the main thing is there's a great article in The Atlantic this month about the confidence gap between men and women. And the whole thing that they talk about mainly for women, that I liked that it was a little bit action-oriented, was about how the lack of confidence prevents women from taking action. And it's taking the action that gives you more confidence, and so taking action gives you more confidence, you have more confidence to take more action, and the main thing is to not do anything. If you don't do anything when you're not passionate about what you're doing and you're not finding fulfillment, that's where you really lose. Right. You just have to start doing something. And once you do that, it'll lead to something else, which will lead to something else, and you'll feel more confident in the path.
Okay, so that was all great, and now we're going to do the rubber hits the road section of our conversation and talk about integration. So, as I mentioned, you guys both have kids, and in our sort of 24/7 in touch with the office world, I think that integration is something that bedevils many of us, but sustains many of us. Can you talk a little bit about what you think of the notion of integration? And how that sort of works and doesn't work in your own lives?
Well, I think I'm in a very particular situation in that my business is integrated, just in and of itself. I mean, we are the mother company, and my partner and I always joke that if we're neglecting our kids, there's something really wrong. And from the get-go, we wanted to have a corporate culture that could support families. It's really not that hard in this technological age to create a corporate culture where you can pick up your kid a couple days a week, and then after bedtime, work until 1 in the morning. It's very easy to do, and it's all about quality of work versus quantity of time spent working or working, as so many people do. I mean, I get more done between the hours of 8 p.m. and 1 a.m. than I ever did in an office situation outside this mother company office, but in a traditional work environment. It's very possible to do if we do really change the shape of a work day. But it does have its drawbacks too, because then there are kids in your workspace, or there are kids in your mind, in the middle of your day, and you have to make sacrifices. But I think it's worth it.
Will you talk a little bit about what we were talking about backstage, about about working from home?
That is working at home where I draw the line. I cannot work at home when my kid is around. There's absolutely
and he's
not
8,
an option.
Right?
And
so he's not like a 2-year-old clinging to your leg.
No, but he, I hear him playing and it's distracting, or he comes in to talk to me, and what I really don't want to do is yell at him because I'm in the middle of something, or ignore him, or make him, that compartmentalization I feel like is very important. And even though my life is so very integrated, and he is a big part of the mother company and helping us come up with our new products, and he's my best focus group, it's very important to me that when I am home, I am focused on him. You know, we do this thing called special time, which is 15 minutes a day, where I make a really big deal about shutting the door, turning off the phone. You know, nobody can reach me if somebody knocks on the door. I'm not even gonna answer it because I am so focused on you, and it's just 15 minutes. Like, we can all do that. And that like fills the love bank in him so tremendously that then I can go back to work and he feels like, you know, satisfied with his mom. But if you're constantly distracted and trying to ride both worlds, I find that to be a recipe for disaster.
And so, and you can count the days, because I have 2 teenagers and they don't want special time with mom. Sure. Just so you know.
I'm getting
You've got like
I
3
know.
more years of special time, and then it's all over.
I know.
Shilpa, how about you? How does integration work and not work in your life?
I think it's similar, and I also am a big believer in special time. And especially like with my kids being a little younger, like letting them choose what they get to do is a really big winner. That empowers them a lot. But integration to me, I think it's not limited to like a woman or to a mom. Like what we try to do in our family is also integrate into each other. So I find it helps my relationship the best when I also go to my husband's hospital and integrate in his day. And if he comes to my work and the 3-year-old goes to the 6-year-old's classroom and vice versa, and everyone actually knows what everybody's day looks like.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I can't do, like, I would love, I think we all, like that ideal, like you were describing, like having your kids at work, like how great is this?
Yeah, for 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. But if you create those contexts where they do have a reason to be there and it is special, so like a company barbecue, or you know, like today's the day that they come and there's an activity for them, so it actually does integrate, like those are great opportunities, but I personally don't think that for my job and my career, it's possible to integrate it all together. And I've tried it before to great detriment.
Yeah. Okay, so we have 1 minute and 37 seconds. I want to ask you, when you, and I'm sorry we didn't get to spend more time on integration, but this kind of speaks to that. When you have to, you know, oftentimes, unfortunately, it's just a reality, our work lives and our personal lives are battling each other. So do you have any sort of techniques or thought processes or rituals you do to help yourself prioritize when integration doesn't feel possible and one has to win out over the other?
You know, it's really about prioritizing. It's really about setting limits. Like, as an entrepreneur, I can work 24 hours a day. And it's hard not to.
Right.
But I have to put my own foot down and say no, and just really remember what's most important to me. And sometimes work is gonna be higher on the scale, and sometimes my family is gonna be higher on the scale, and you can figure out ways to support both of them at different times, maybe not all the time together, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, similar. Thinking about it not in larger time segments than just one day or 1 week, and really saying that, okay, this trade-off I'm making now for work, but how can I make it up later in my personal life? And just making sure that in the long run it's balanced as opposed to being balanced every minute of the day.
Well, will you talk okay, last thing. You were saying something to me in the green room about the example you want to set for your kids. Yeah. And even when you do have to choose work over them, can you just...
Yeah, I comfort myself a lot with just making sure that I know that at the end of the day, when my kids are older, that they look up to their mom as someone who didn't compromise passion. And that, in the long run, is something that will give them more fulfillment. Even though I had to make sacrifices in the short term with them, that they will always see and not compromise for themselves in their future because their mom never did. Yeah. And that's one way when work does take priority, I make myself feel better.
Yeah, and I do think along the way there are ways of letting them know that they are a part of it too, including them in your inspiration, your questions at work, you know, what it is that you're working on. Ask your kids to participate in your struggles at work in some way, just to give their opinion so they feel like they're part of it too.
Okay, well, thank you both so much. We could go on forever, but
Yes.
But I'll get the hook.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.